Then the other thing I want to touch bases on, I think I talked with you and the mayor at Mayor's Night Out, and I never really got any confirmation back on it, was 3 properties I brought to you specifically, one on Cushing, Portage, and I don't recall the other street. But the city took money, and I'm not sure, maybe you can answer where the money came from, $500,000, and put into these 3 houses to rehab. Now, I don't know if they were part of the 1,000 house program, and they were rehab. But you spent $500,000 worth of, whether it was taxpayer or federal money or whatever, to rehab them. And then we gave 2 of them away to the Near Northwest Neighborhood Association, and one of them to the Heritage Foundation, or?
No, they were contracted to South Bend Heritage and the Northeast Neighborhood Revitalization.
But we put $500,000 in them, and we
Yes.
sold each one of those 3 houses.
No, only one was sold so far, on Prairie.
Okay, well, whatever the case is. But the listing prices for those houses that we just sunk $500,000 in were like $64,000, 50-something thousand. So we were lucky to get not even $200,000 back out of the 3 homes we just dumped $500,000 into. So I had asked where that money came from that went into those. Were they part of this 1,000 homes? And why would we dump all this money into those homes and then basically give them to not-for-profits? Because if I'm correct, when they get sold, the city's not going to get the money back for those. The money goes to the not-for-profits?
Only in those particular cases, that was the proposal for those 3 houses. When we do that kind of same process with federal dollars, when the house is sold, it's a requirement that that money come back to the city and be put in the pot for the next round.
So those weren't federal dollars, those were our
Those
local
were-
tax dollars,
They
or?
were vacant and abandoned dollars, and they were 3 houses that we had gotten back as a city from an old loan program because of defaults and.
So when those are sold, though, will the city recoup their money?
No. When the agreement was that the proceeds of the sale would go back to the entity that actually did the
The
rehabilitation.
not-profits.
Yes.
So,
And it helps to pay for, the ones that haven't sold so far, they're paying for lawn mowing and electricity and gas, and then through the winter, they'll pay for snow plowing, et cetera.
to get to your question, I had the same reaction. And I think, so I actually called MACAF, talked to the contractors in the county, and actually those per square foot dollar cost, construction costs, are comparable with the dollar costs that are going on in the community. So that helps. That was also part of the light bulb saying, we need a new system, we need a new approach to this, because you're looking at if the rehab costs, which goes back, Regina, frankly, to the question about receivership, because it's the exact same situation, just you should switch out an actor. It costs $150,000 to rehab a $60,000 house, let alone a $30,000 house. That's the same reason why, and that's because whenever you use the public money, taxpayer dollars, you got to bring it up to like fully to code. You got to use licensed contractors. Got to make sure, things like lead paint, all those things, because when you're using public dollars, you got to check all those boxes, right?
I guess, just real quick, I guess my question would be, who chose those 3 houses to be rehabbed? Because with $500,000, I could have hired a builder to build 6 homes at $75,000 a piece, and we could have housed 6 families for that same money in brand new homes on vacant lots that you had, instead of housing 3 families in 100-year-old homes that you went and rehabbed. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't make very smart sense in economic development or community investment to dump $500,000, and even if it's federal money, still came out of our pockets, into these 3 homes and then give them to a not-for-profit. And I understand what the not-for-profits' ideas are, but to give it to them and you're not going to recoup any of that money, I mean, it just makes no sense. And if we're supposed to be investing in the community, that's not a very wise investment. And I'm not college educated, so, bottom line is, if I can see that, I'm sure anybody in this room can see that. That's wasteful spending. And there has to be a reason it was done that way. I haven't been able to track who the contractors were that did the work, or I know what the amounts were, and I know what was done to them. But I mean, that's a scary thought. If that's going on with these 3, what other scenarios has that went on within the city with the tax dollars?
Well, no, I don't think you'll find any malfeasance. I think you're gonna find that those are what construction costs are. I think the bigger question, however, is, what are the appropriate activities in today's economy, with today's demographics, that make sense to address the right questions for affordable housing. And, when you look at the census data, 55% of renters in South Bend pay more than a third of their take-home to rental payments. So start to think about maybe, looking at what's the right, there's a mismatch between our existing housing stock, which is almost exclusively single-family residential, and where the market is going, which is there's more interest for rental, there's more interest for multifamily. So you have a housing stock that has been, the city that up until last year was shrinking in population for 50 years. So you've got a third more housing than you do people. So there's some issues there about what's the best mechanism. I think that's exactly why we're looking at this and figuring out what's the best way to deploy those dollars to get to really address the question that exists. I will also say, though, philosophically, it's worth the conversation. Interesting level. What's the quality of public housing? Because there's one school of thought that gets as much as possible, get as many units as possible. And what happens is it gets built at a poor quality. The other school of thought is public housing should be aspirational. It should help lead the market. It should help. It should be built to a higher standard so that it inspires the private sector. I think that's where the legacy of some of those projects were done. They're done to high standard. And I think part of that question is, what's the best delivery mechanism? But I'm with you. I think that absolutely has to get reviewed.